Hey book friends and book foes. Today is another episode of 5 Reads where I tell you about 5 reads. First up is a behemoth. It was my big book of last year. One of the book clubs that I'm part of has initiated a big book challenge, which is a book that takes you 6 months to read. You can go at your own pace-ish because you've got that 6-month deadline, and it's designed to encourage us to tackle the hard ones that we'd put off otherwise. And my big book for the second half of last year was The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk. Now this actually has a much longer title inside the front cover. The Books of Jacob, or A Fantastic Journey Across 7 Borders, 5 Languages and 3 Major Religions, not counting the minor sects. Told by the dead, supplemented by the author, drawing from a range of books and aided by imagination, the which being the greatest natural gift of any person, that the wise might have it for a record, that my compatriots reflect, lay persons gain some understanding, and melancholy souls obtain some slight enjoyment. This was published in 2014, and I don't know when the English translation came out. I reckon around then. Olga Tokarczuk won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and this translation is by Jennifer Croft, who's done a lot of translations of Olga Tokarczuk's work. Where even to begin to tell you about this book? It is a confusing one. First and foremost, it's designed to be confusing. Tokarczuk wrote a book called Flights and a book before that called House of Day, House of Night, and they are both described as constellation novels. So they are vignettes and short stories around a theme, ultimately. The Books of Jacob is structured similarly, except each of the chapters progresses us forward in linear time, and it's a different POV. It is about it's about a guy called Jacob Frank, who obviously that's his anglicized name, and like this is all historical fiction. It's based on a true story, and it is about Frank. It's about the people who follow Frank. It's difficult to experience actually because it's just one linear narrative that doesn't really contain an arc except for the rising and then the falling of this cult leader, Jacob Frank. It's reconstructed from historical sources, but of course there's always a narrative interpretation, putting words in people's mouths. We can't know what they actually said or did aside from what's in historical records. And so it's about Frank, who's a cult leader. They start out as Jewish, and Frank decides that he and his followers are going to convert to Islam because that's what a previous Messiah has done. And then when that stops working for them, they convert to Christianity. They wander across Europe over to Turkey and then back to Germany and France in the end. And they're following Frank and his charismatic personality that has established basically a sex cult. They're always sex cults, aren't they? None of the stories in Frank's POV. It is all from his followers. It's always a different POV each chapter as we progress through time. And some of these people are fully committed, and some of these people are disillusioned over time. Some of these people aren't followers at all. They're observers from the outside. We've got Christian bishops and stuff like that. And then framing the whole thing is a woman who is basically in stasis. It's a magical realism element. She's in stasis. She's been dying for years. They pop her in a cave when they move away from the beginning village. They pop her in a cave for safekeeping, and she stays there for decades, being omniscient, being able to see into their hearts and their wants and their needs and understand them at a way that they can't understand each other, and have an overarching view of what's happening. And in the end, she gives us the follow-up on what happened to these people and their descendants. And so that's the cohesive story. But my goodness, it is a big book to talk about. Obviously, cult leaders are charismatic, and these people are following him for something to believe in rather than because they believe that he's speaking the truth. in uncertain times, it's easy to latch onto a cult figure when you're looking for certainty in an unstable time. But like most cults, of course, it collapses after the death of the founders. So even after Frank dies and his daughter tries to continue on, it falls apart because they've reached the pinnacle. They're too much in debt, too much power that has waned, and then the charismatic figurehead has died. I think there's a reason Tokarczuk won the Nobel Prize. It is a big, ambitious book. It was quite contentious in Poland when it was released because it is based on historical sources that perhaps certain elements didn't want resurfaced. Did I enjoy it? Yes, actually I did. It was confusing, and once I realised that I was just going to be confused, I didn't need to understand what was happening, and I still, for the most part, am struggling. It was journey rather than destination, and I'm glad that I read it in the end. Wow, I tried that twice and I don't know if I got anywhere. Let's try this for a third time. I should know by now not to record when I'm hungry because I just never remember to say all the things I wanted to say. One of the things about reading the physical format of this book rather than the digital version is that the page numbers in here count backwards. So it starts at 950 or something like that and counts down to 1. And I read somewhere, must have been the introduction in here, that of course is a deliberate choice designed to mimic Hebrew texts where they're read in reverse to the way that we read Western English and other languages. But also it's a countdown. What is it counting down to? It's subverting expectations with just that one little change. I wonder if that was difficult to put into print. But anyway, that was super interesting to discover when I bought the physical version because the digital version does not do that. And one other thing I forgot to mention was that each of the sections has a title, like the Book of Fog or the Book of Sand, the Book of the Road, the Book of the Comet. It goes on. And I really like that too because, again, it's evoking that biblical kind of text, well, you know, the book of, but also that's where they are in space and time. Again, just another little bit contributes to just the whole vibe of the story. Next up was something easier. It's The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the first in what I think is going to be a trilogy called Shadow of the Leviathan, and it is fantasy, straight up fantasy, except I would call it science fiction if it wasn't in a secondary world. It is a murder mystery. It is a cozy murder mystery. And it just blew me away because I've been disillusioned with fantasy for some time now. I don't enjoy romantasy, and that is what is being published, is stuff that's clearly YA or romantasy or YA romantasy. It's not for me. Or like James Islington, and that's romance, and I don't enjoy romance either. Came out in 2024, and the reason I picked it up is because it was shortlisted for the Hugo Award in 2025, and I read the blurbs of all the Hugo shortlisted books, and that was the only one that sounded good. So we've got two detectives, like a Holmes-Watson situation. We've got our main character, Din, who's a junior investigator, and he's assigned to a senior investigator, Anna, and they're investigating a murder. So, you know, so far so good, except Anna can't go out in the field because of a thing that happens in this society where you get body augmentations, which feels so sci-fi. Lots of the world is derived from these augmentations distilled from leviathans. Leviathans are real and they are dangerous, and where this is set is right near where the leviathans in the ocean attack the land. There's a massive seawall to prevent that happening, but the seawall gets compromised. Dun, dun, dun. And so it's this tension between... Oh, I'm ringing. Hello? Yes? On the shelf above you.
On the shelf above me?
Yes. I'm just sitting here recording a book video. Oh, maybe I threw them away. I might have put them in the label cupboard. Right. I forgot where I'm up to. So we're talking about leviathans. Leviathans are big, scary, dangerous things, but then also can be harvested for what the civilization depends on. And everybody in the government has, and I guess I can't recall, but I imagine people in private life with money have augmentations that enhance their abilities in some way, but also the trade-off is at the cost of their life. Maybe not literally, but their quality of life. So Din works for the government. He's an investigator. He has an augmentation where he has photographic memory of not only what he sees, but what he smells and what he hears. One thing that I want to say on this point that I forgot to say is that Din, in particular, with the enhanced memory, can never unsee, and that's gonna wreck you in quite a short amount of time. And other people that we meet in the story with other augmentations have similar ongoing side effects. And so that's what I meant by life-altering, life-damaging effects, is not that it's going to kill you, but you may wish to be dead. Anna also has clearly augmentations that we don't know about, but she's always blindfolded to reduce the sensory input because otherwise it's just too much for her. So Din goes out in the field and does the investigating and is learning how to be an investigator in this book, and then coming back and reporting it to Anna, who, like Sherlock, puts it all together, which makes it a bit more collaborative than the detective doing all the work and then just explaining it to the sidekick / reader. We can go with Din and harvest the clues and then get Anna's help to interpret the clues, because also Anna's been in the big wide world and Din hasn't, and so she has more context for everything than we and Din have. Even though it's a murder mystery and even though there is danger for our characters, there's no actual peril, I think, and that makes it feel really cozy. And I love a murder mystery, you guys know that. So to put that, a murder mystery, in an interesting fantasy world, I loved it. I scrummed it up. I immediately read the second one and I've got the third one on pre-order because I love it. Next up was Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is book 5 in Murderbot, and it's also the first full-length novel in Murderbot. The rest of the short stories or novellas. This one came out in 2020. So by book 5, we know Murderbot. We know how Murderbot feels about life, about humans, about itself. It's not new. The point now is not that does Murderbot care for people, because it knows. It admits to itself, if not to anyone else. And the humans know that Murderbot does actually maybe like humans, yes. The crux of this one is Murderbot admitting to itself that it can still forge its own identity and sense of self while caring for other people and things, because Art is in this one too, who is a ship. It's about Murderbot developing a self-identity and autonomy and relationships while still not being human, and it's okay that Murderbot is not human interacting with humans. Of course, it's action. Of course, there's Murderbot's dry humour. Of course, there's humans that accept Murderbot and humans that don't, and all the elements that we love in Murderbot. And Murderbot saves the day, but Murderbot also needs help saving the day and accepts help and is basically just growing as a person. It was a really good story. It was sustained across the whole length of the novel, which sometimes if you've got a short story and it gets extended, that can be difficult. It's not a place to start. Start at number 1. Next up, we have Cibola Burn by James S. Corey. This is book 4 in the Expanse series. And of course, the name references the 7 Cities of Gold, which when you learn that this is about frontier expansion, makes a lot of sense. This came out in 2014 and this would be my 3rd or my 4th read of this book, but I was buddy reading it with Luke, who's a newbie to the Expanse, and so all this was new, and he described this one as cookers in space, which I love. Cookers, if you're not up with your Australian, is a term that we use for conspiracy theory nut jobs that kind of arose in the COVID times with anti-vaccine people. This is the first episode where we leave the solar system, spoilers, the ring gates are open. And so rather than staying in the solar system and struggling with what's there, struggling to terraform Mars, struggling to live in the belt with food and water rations, struggling on Earth with lack of space, everyone's just expanding into the new frontier. So we go to this new frontier, which is called Illis or New Terra, depending which colonizers you are, because there's two factions. There's Belters who've moved in and started mining the lithium there and built a town. And then there's the Earth Chartered Company who has mining rights and exploration rights. And they believe that they should be the only ones on the planet. Holden and the Rocinante go to be sheriffs and basically broke a peace between these two. But not really, because James Holden is known for fucking it up. So the part where he's gone to broker peace is not actually to broker a peace, is it? As with all the Expanse, it's not about the science fiction. It's about humans being humans. It's about, even though we've reached the stars, we've got land disputes and corporate exploitation and frontier violence and humans just being humans, even though they've got more technology than us. Obviously, humans being humans, colonialism is a huge part of what is happening here, and it's just over that larger scale. But also in this one, and this is known as the worst of the Expanse books, it's the least liked, and it's because of this frontier Wild West thing, which I didn't really like the first time I read it either, but also because it digs really more deeply into the builders, which is the name given to the force that created the protomolecule and is an unknowable, really powerful entity that has since died millennia ago. And things happen on this new planet that reactivate their technology on the planet. And so even though we've got a little Wild West story, we've also got this alien civilization influencing the story in terms of disasters that pivot the story. Spoilers. And also, in hindsight, having read the whole series, it provides building blocks for what's to come later. And in that context, I enjoyed rereading this story. But the first time I went through, I was like, oh, Wild West, tedious, because the stakes have changed. And also, we miss some people that we love. We don't have Avasarala in this one because she's on Earth doing Earth business, and we don't have Bobby because Bobby's on Mars doing Mars business. It's really just the crew of the Rocinante on Illis/New Terra trying to negotiate and survive. I love The Expanse, as you know. If you want to join us, buddy reading The Expanse, we haven't started the next one yet, which is... No, we have. We just finished reading the next one. So the one after that, book 6, we're up to. If you want to come and join us, let me know. Oh, I'm so hungry. It's nearly lunchtime. Last is The Para Method by Tiago Forte. Call number here is 658.4, which is Executive Life. It's under Management. Where have I written it? Management and Public Relations. So this is like executive productivity tool. It is, you know those gift books that you buy for new mums or for grandmas that are full of like tiny little digestible bits of wisdom? That, but for productivity bros. It's short. It's short, literally. It's got full pages of images and then there's little call out text things that just make it short and digestible. And it's basically Forte cashing in on the Para method that he outlines in Building a Second Brain and expanding it to a whole book. And it is expanded, but it's unnecessary. The Para method is splitting your documents, your data, into 4 areas: projects, areas, resources, and archives, and making it easy to sort the files that you have and then retrieve the information from the files that you have. It's one of those things that you take on board and take the bits that are going to work for you. If you're into productivity life, which you guys know that I am, designed to help you organize your information and then reduce the cognitive load of retrieving the information. And it's just a one of many philosophies for getting it done. So if it works, cool, take what you need from it and discard the rest. It's providing a structured framework if you don't know where to begin, but you probably don't need it. And definitely if you're interested in it, get it from the library. You do not need to buy this one, or even just read Building a Second Brain, because this really just expands what's in there with picture pages. Did I buy it because this stuff is like crack to me? Yes. I'm fully aware of my weaknesses. One of the things about these books is you don't get it because it's a new idea to you. You get it to remind you to apply the ideas that you already know. And sometimes you just need to kick up the arse. That's what this is, a kick up the arse. And that is 5 books, my friends. My wish list is below if you want to have an idea of what's on my radar. There's links to all these books below, and there's a link to my shop as well if you live in Australia or New Zealand and want some sexy, pretty stationery or an awesome pen. My tummy is rumbling. It must be time for lunch.